when I was your age, I was doing this, I picked myself up with my bootstraps. So there's so many stereotypes. And then, there's then, even women say, you're the man of the house. If you lose it, what are we going to do? And our outlook is also very different compared to women. My computer suddenly doesn't want to. Okay. And then, but the thing is, don't men get sick? If they do get sick, they don't seek help. They're not given help. And then what happens when men get sick, physical sick, they really get sick because they miss the earlier signs. That's what happens. So that is a big conundrum. You don't ask for help, but in the emergency room, when you see, there are going to be more sicker men lining up to be seen compared to the women. And that is because we have reluctance to seek help. Of course, men tend to have more incidences of diabetes mellitus, hypertension, obesity, and they're more likely to get cancer. Now, why the difference? Why the difference is a good question. Brother Muhammad, Akhas, could you like silence everybody, because I hear some background noise from other people?
Sure, inshallah, I'm taking care of it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. So why the difference? Why the difference? It's a good question to ask. There are many reasons for it, but there's no one good reason to say, oh, this one it is. I think I've already mentioned several differences. But what happens in the mind, men's mind? Is there a neurological difference? Yes. Men tend to have different brain centers compared to women. Is there a psychological difference? Yes. Men's outlook on life is extremely different compared to women. Women can pick out nuances in relationships, in emotions. Men, remember this slide? You see, women are able to pick up nuances, even in colors. For men, there's only one shade of pink, but for women, look at that, they're like 5 shades of pink. Green for man is like 1. So this is a symbolism. It's got nothing to do with research, but it is true that men tend to have a different outlook because of physiology, biology, that is anatomy in the brain. We'll talk about that more. And then psychologically. And they end up paying the price. Now, why? I mean, this is what the deal is. Why do we not seek help? But I'm saying we, I'm including my brothers here, including me. So, I mean, in the United States, there's reluctance to go to the physician, even to get a physical. But men are more reluctant, 3 times more reluctant not to get a physical exam. And when they do get a physical exam, they tend to kind of diminish or underreport. Because look at this guy, every man thinks he's the macho man, strong, ideal person. When he goes to the doctors, they minimize their problems. It's like, oh, you know what? I put on a little weight. Even though you're a man, you're obese. Look at yourself. Look at this guy. He's obese, but he thinks in his mind, he's like, I'm all right. Look at my belly. When I suck my belly in, I look all right. So these are the kind of things people have. So I would advise everybody to get a physical. That's the least, they don't do any bad things over there. At the most, you might get a blood work that's, to test for thyroid or your testosterone, to rule out diabetes or hypertension. One of the biggest problems that I see in men is sleep apnea. They're miserable because they're overweight. And once you get overweight, the incidence of obstructive sleep apnea, like when you snore and stop breathing in the middle of the night for microseconds, like few times in an hour. That's what is called obstructive sleep apnea. Sleep apnea pushes you into a circle. Because of sleep apnea, you get obese, and because of obesity, sleep apnea gets worse. And then you develop sleep apnea-related hypertension, weight increase, and then diabetes. So these can be easily picked up at a physical exam. Now let's come to psychological. Now, unfortunately, remember I was talking to you about those stereotypical attitudes we have about men. Like, since early age, boys are conditioned that, you don't express your feelings, you suck it up. It has become a male identity to not express, just suck it up, be strong. However much bad you're feeling inside, you have a smile. You still get up and go to work because you have to take care of the family, because you have to take care of children and the house. Bills have to be paid. That is true, but you can still express, but men don't. Now, how many men, believe me, I want to ask this question. How many people have seen men actually crying? It's like, it's like your masculinity depends on putting up a brave face or a flat face. And I haven't seen many many men cry in my office. They want to, they tear up, but then, they suck it up. And then, there's also stigma attached to it. Because of the stereotypy, men are not supposed to get depressed. And they carry the burden of the whole world, entire world on their shoulders. They're afraid, just because, even if I don't disclose that I am depressed, sad, stressed, people might sense it. Is that going to affect my finances, employment? And then am I going to lose friends? Because mental health is a huge stigma, both for men and women. People just shut up and don't say anything. So we have to encourage each other to open up. And then that's how society will change in decreasing this stigma. Yes, stigma is decreasing. But then there is this double bind men are put up in. It's like, damn you do and damn you don't. That's what is called double bind, emotionally, physically, psychologically. Everybody says, oh, I am saying, hey, men, just, talk more, take care of your mental health, take care of emotional health, take care of your stress, and, substance abuse disorder is more common in men than women. But unfortunately, because of the tendency of bottling up emotions, there is actually a silent crisis of depression, anxiety, and above all, suicide. We'll talk more about suicide in a minute. And then on the other hand, men are also told, it's like, what are you crying about? You're a man. The whole world is for you. You have the man privilege. So you don't have shut up, I have heard many pundits talk about this. This is a survey from Bloomberg that you have it on the screen, which say, check your emotions at the door. That's very common. So, damn if you do and damn if you don't. Now, what is acceptable by society for a man to express? Now, the man thinks crying is not an option. The man thinks talking it out is not an option. Expressing your feelings are not an option. So what do you do? It's a double-blind situation. So we men do express our emotions, but very differently. The very nature of man is to be possessive, to dominate, strength-based. So that's what we do. We become more dominant in our relationship. We become more possessive in our relationships. But at the same time, we are safeguarding our emotions even more fiercely. And because, you got to put up appearances, like, because the society doesn't agree with your way of expressing. So what do? You become violent. Violent with yourself. You play violent games. You watch violent sports. And then, domestic violence. You become domestic with your partner, husband, wife, and especially with the children. I have a slide on that. You'll see that. And then men take up sports, and they especially take up contact sports, or they take up like running, jogging, where they sweat and their heart rate goes up. We'll talk more about that, the importance of exercise. And then if you see a man taking risk-taking sports like bungee jumping, skydiving, racing cars and bikes, you do know that he's feeling so down and out and stressed that he wants to feel the adrenaline. And this is what gives him the adrenaline. And you can say he's also practicing for something bad. It's like, there's a retrospective chart study which have said that men who have committed suicide, almost 37% of them took up unusual risk-taking behaviors like bungee jumping. It's almost they were like trying to desensitize themselves, like, taking risk and dying. So, if your husband, father, brother is doing this, take a note, ask. Now, increase in substance use is acceptable. I can't see you guys, when I see people, I really enjoy this because I put people on the spot. I'm thinking that most of the people who are listening are Muslims. Islam forbids, any kind of khamr. Khamr means, that which gives you some high. So that includes alcohol, marijuana, or any kind of drugs. If a man suddenly takes up drugs, I know when I ask common people, what's alcohol rates in Muslims, they say it must be lower because, it's forbidden. But unfortunately, the reality is the alcohol rate is exactly the same as general population, especially in the second generation is actually a little more. So it's ironic. But if a man takes up smoking all of a sudden at age 40, something to be worried about. Now, what happens? If you're going to bottle up all that stress, it's going to go somewhere. It's like kaboom, something will happen. And then everybody takes up and takes notice. It's like, what happened? You were doing all right. You were so strong. How come you're behaving like this? How come this is happening to you? It's like, unfortunately, nobody observed. And then I told you, men become more possessive, more dominant, more violent. First it comes out on your own wife, and then it translates to your other family members, and ultimately to the children. You see there a side-by-side slide, the mother is, the husband yells at the mom, father yells at the mom, and mom yells at the child. It's an awful cycle. Now, where do mental health issues come from? They do not come out of thin air. Mental health is very genetic. As you can see, I've delineated so many ways you inherit mental health. So I would advise, please, to put yourself in silent mode, mute yourself so that I don't get a feedback or other noises, please. So I'm going to go in detail with each one of them. Genetics, family history. I have a slide, so I'll tell you more. Biological, temperament. Wherever there's an asterisk, I reminded myself that there's a slide, so don't go on. I'm known to talk a lot, so I have to limit myself. And somebody got to keep the time. So, but I've put myself here, I myself on, so it shows me time. Brain and anatomy predisposes you to depression, stress, and then past history of trauma. This is extremely important to understand that, in many societies and cultures, beating children up and mistreating children is acceptable. that tends to have a direct effect on the brain. There is an area of the brain right behind your eyebrows called prefrontal cortex. Children who have been abused or traumatized or neglected tend to have a thinner area of this. This is the most important part of the brain. I'll come to that in a second. So environment plays a role, medical illness plays a role. If you're going through cancer or things like that, or any other illness, your diabetes is poorly controlled, it is going to have a psychological impact. Change of life. I have a slide on that, various, there are certain times when you will automatically feel more stress. That's also called life events. I'll come to that in a second. Then social media. This is the latest epidemic. We're going to talk a little more detail for social media. Now, genetics, when I say genetics, there are two ways. Something runs in the families because you live in close vicinity, you influence each other. That is called it runs in families. But genetics is you inherit it. Even if you're not living with your parents, even one of the child, if they're twins and one child lives in a different household and one child lives with a parent, the mental health issues have been shown to have similar rates in both the twins. So it is very, very genetic. But then, unfortunately, there's no one gene which says, oh, this is schizophrenia gene, or this is a bipolar gene, or this is a depression gene. There's no one gene, but you inherit traits. And hundreds and thousands of traits bring about changes in your genes and predispose you. And then there is something biological. Is it your temperament or your personality, or that predisposes you to stress? Like, for instance, temperamentally, some people are just novelty seeking, and they're less bound to get depressed, anxious, worried, and stressed. Whereas there are some other people who are just harm avoidance. These are the people who tend to get more anxious, worried, social phobia. And then there are people who are dependent on rewards or incentives or disincentives. These are the people who are ultimately will be influenced by the environment, how the environment is treating them. We'll come to brain anatomy in a second. Remember, I told you age and life events predispose you to some mental health issues, stress, and all. Like, for instance, adolescence. It is a natural stage of life when children tend to get depressed and anxious. Now, early life, like, for instance, in early childhood, there is a predisposition to get anxiety, like separation anxiety. In an adolescence, the first advent of depression or anxiety disorder can happen. Now, early adulthood. Now, early adulthood brings about, if you're predisposed to bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, this is where it sets in. Or just reaching the adulthood, some people get depressed and anxious and stressed. Let's use the word stress just by reaching adulthood, because expectations differ. There are different expectations from children compared to adolescents and adults. It's time to go out of the house, be on your own, get married. Now, when you get married, some people are happy. Yes, the happiness and bliss lasts not more than a year. And after that, reality kicks in, especially if you become a father, birth of a child. The reason is, now you're going to lose your, carefree lifestyle. You're going to have wife and then a child. And retirement brings in interesting statistics. There was an old company called Enron. It was huge. They used to employ like 600,000 people. It was Chicago-based. It went bust when I was new in this country. They had done a research about their pension scheme. So they were saying, how long do people live after they retire? They're trying to calculate their retirement benefits. And then they realized, they studied people for 5 to 10 years after retirement. They realized that majority of the people died within 5 years of retirement, especially men. So for men out there who are thinking of early retirement, remember this: the chances you're going to die, overwhelming chances that you're going to die within 5 years are much higher. So I would advise people to lead an active life and not retire. Even if you retire, the one thing which differentiated from people who retired and lived longer compared to not live longer was that the feel that you're needed, and that if you're working something, that if a life is something, or people depend on you. That is one of the differentiating factor in people who did not die and who lived longer. And divorce or separation, this is very common. Divorce, separation is as bad as death of a significant other, parents. I'm telling you, when my father passed away about 15 years ago, I was stressed and going through grief. It lasted almost 6 months. Now, remember I told you social media. Social media itself predisposes you to mental health stress. Now, men tend to play more social media, are on more social media compared to women. And Facebook, I hear now there are 2.5 billion people in Facebook. I mean, it's like 1/4 of world's population is on Facebook. And then Snapchat, I understand it's equal number. WhatsApp, I understand there are like 1.5 billion people on WhatsApp. I'm on WhatsApp. I just want you to know, I was on Facebook for 3 years. Then 2.5, 3 years ago, this October, it'll be 3 years. One fine day, I decided I'm not going to go back to Facebook because I was spending 2-3 hours per day. And I was also becoming more cynical. And that is the day I said, I'm not going back. I never went back. I don't know what's happening on my account. I did not even go back to close my account. People tell me, oh, you're being tagged. I said, I'm not on there. I don't know why people are tagging me. Now, social media, there's a whole slide. I'll tell you how it leads to depression. Vague booking. This happens mostly on Facebook, but it's happening on Snapchat too. It's really crazy. I'll tell you how it predispose you to stress. Video games, men tend to play more violent games. Gaming computers, now this new fad of metaverse and VR headsets and virtual reality games, it's a whole ball game. There's no research on that. But now, remember I told you social media plays a huge role. There was a study in Pennsylvania where they took 145 well-adjusted college-age kids and divided them into 2 groups. There was another study which divided them into 3. This one, they divided into 2. And one group, they said, you're restricted to social media only half hour per day. And they were living in the dorm, so they could monitor them. And the other group, they said, hey, you can watch as much as and be on social media as much. And after just 6 weeks, the incidence of depression in people who were on social media unrestricted compared to restriction was 6 times higher. Why does social media do this? Like Facebook, Snapchat, it's all in perception. Because you see, everybody puts their best photograph on social media. It's like, when you go there, you think, oh my God, people are having so much fun. Their lives are perfect. And you feel, oh, so isolated. My life is miserable. You develop low self-esteem. It's like more stress. And then, social media, the people tell me, especially my young and children that age, oh, we're multitasking. I'm studying, listening to music. I'm also on my Snapchat. Actually, there's nothing called multitasking. It's presumed multitasking. It's actually, you are actually closing that window in the brain and going to another window very quickly, and then going to another window. Human beings cannot multitask. We actually stop doing one thing and start another one, stop doing that, start another one. It's different that you do it between the two. That is what causes exhaustion in your brain, because your mind is in overdrive. It also causes decrease in concentration. And if you're on social media like 3 hours a day, look at this guy, this is typical. I used to do that with Facebook all the time, like 3-4 hours. I still do that with WhatsApp, but there's not much to do. After like half hour, I'm done. But then, this vague booking, it's like, there are many people out there who make you depressed. It's like they give you a very important information, very subtly vague, and you don't know who they are targeting. And then you feel perplexed. It's like if your close friend has done that, you think, oh my God, is it about me? The wife thinks, oh my God, is it about me? And there's another thing which is developed, it's like called doom scrolling. You tend to identify like, negative news, and your brain enjoys negative news. Not enjoys, but it's like, it's like masochistic, sadistic, And then, especially if it relates to you. Relating to somebody else is one thing, and relating to you is more important. Social media addiction also predisposes you to stress. There was a time, I mean, look at this picture. If you're looking at this slide, when these are all teenagers or young adult folks sitting together. And what are they doing? They're not talking to each other. They're on their phones. They're talking to somebody else who's thousands of miles away. Whereas there's a person next to you who's 1 inch away. When we were that age, we used to be just goofing around, talking our maybe emotions out. I don't know, that helped. And then, there is a like sadistic kind of our brain. It actually likes social networking and looking at bad news and talking bad about others and good about ourselves. The same areas of the brain that light up when you are addicted to a substance light up when you're addicted to social media. If you're using more than 2 hours of social media, then you are addicted. People, I know that, people have had seizures, withdrawal seizures, if their phones are taken away, or they feel confused, isolated, perceive depression, loneliness when their phones are taken away. It is as addictive as alcohol. Now, when you're looking at somebody and you feel that, something is not right, what to look for? You got to be on the lookout. It's like, has the person become newly irritable or angry, or has become more aggressive? Rather than saying, why being aggressive all of a sudden, it's like try to find out what's behind this aggression. Is this man stressed? Especially if the person becomes lower energy and not eating well, a difficulty sleeping or sleeping too much, or, he complains that, I can't concentrate, or mistakes are happening. Person seems preoccupied or edgy, or, they're worrying about something. It's like, about their children all of a sudden. They didn't used to do that. I mean, well-adjusted man looks hopeless. Right? It's good to pay attention. Now, on the other hand, men should also look at the same issues. It's like, why am I irritable? What's going on? Am I doing something that I usually didn't do? I'm having body aches. If the man takes up alcohol or drugs, remember I told you the rate of alcoholism is same as general population amongst Muslims. And especially if these thoughts and behaviors interfere with your work, family, social life, it is time to seek help. Now, there are certain things men will not talk to anybody. A man will not talk about lower sex drive even to his wife, leave alone the doctor, unless it is inquired. A man will not tell you that he's tired or he's gaining weight or losing weight. Then they are in self-denial. They'll also talk, they don't talk about occasional memory problems, issues with attention. Change in food habits is one thing you should look for. Now, as I mentioned to you, men and suicide is an important topic because suicides have been going up. This is CDC data. The one in light blue is female. It is slightly increased compared to 1981, or same. It had decreased in the 2000s and 1990s. It has gone up now. The total suicide rates, you see that purple color, it has gone up. Look at men. It has always been high and it is going high. What is going on? And according to latest research, I'll show you this. 1999, this is broken down by age range. The purple or blue is 1999, 2017 is green. Look at the high suicide rates. Now, the most important is the age of 45 to 64. That is the #1 killer of men now, according to latest 2021 CDC data. It's a #1 killer in that age range. And you see 75 and over is much higher compared to women. So even that is gone up, but above 75 it has gone down. You see 45 to 64, but look at the rates, 9.7 per 100,000. Whereas in men, it is 30.1 per 100,000. Okay, this is strange. It's hard to wrap your head around. If you live in inner city, you tend to have higher suicide rates. And if you live in the suburbs or uppity areas of metro areas, you actually have lower suicide rates. As I mentioned, the suicide rates are going up. As you can see, unintentional injuries are #1 killers, and #2 is suicide, more compared to heart disease and cancer. We think, oh, cancer is a killer, oh, heart disease is a killer. Suicide is a bigger killer than those combined. Now, let's talk about, mental health in men. Let's talk about Muslims, since we are talking from a platform of a mosque. It's important. The reason I bring it up, because suicide is a huge no-no in our religion. Islam forbids suicide. It's a mortal sin. You would straight go to hell. And there are some school of thought that they don't even pray the janaza for a person who's committed suicide. Here's the kicker. I mean, please think, I can't see your faces and I can't even ask questions. Who do you think commits more suicides? Religious people or non-religious people? I was asking this question at dinner table today to my daughter, and she thought, obviously, maybe non-religious people. It is surprising. Religious people commit more suicide than non-religious. Now, amongst Muslims, I asked her this question too, and she was as flabbergasted as I was when I was doing research. Is like, this is a NPR survey. So this is not a study, but a survey. In 2019, they did a survey. Muslims were 2 times more likely to have attempted suicide than other faith groups. Nearly 8% of Muslims in the survey reported a suicide attempt in their lifetime, compared to only 6%, 5%. Statistically, it is important, or not that important. But the thing is, we are thinking about it. We are doing it, even though we're not supposed to do it. What's going on? We don't understand, because this is not a study, it's just a survey. And then this was actually a study in JAMA. This was published. It's Journal of American Medical Association, very recent, that Muslims have twice the rate of suicide attempts compared to other surveyed faith groups. Now, this article did not mention about completed suicides. There is something going on amongst Muslims, even though we are told not to. It's a sin, mortal sin, a major sin. We're still doing it. That means we are very stressed, and we are not taking stock of what's going on. So these are all the issues that I want to talk about: depression, common, major depression, anxiety, social anxiety, panic disorder, OCD, generalized PTSD. I'm not going to talk all about this, but I'm going to talk more about, what is important. When mind is stressed, your body responds to it. When your body is stressed, your mind responds to it. It is important that one is not devoid of the other. There's always a tug of war. So let's talk about what is stress. Stress is whenever your autonomic nervous system, it's like there are 3 types of nervous system: central nervous system, your head; peripheral nervous system, your hand, feet; and there's something called an autonomic nervous system, which runs on automatic. That is closely related to your mind. And whenever you're stressed, your autonomic nervous system is overdrive, increases your adrenaline and cortisol. That's what causes many phases of anger and also many phases of jealousy. I'm sorry, not jealousy, fear and stress, depression. When that is not controlled, that leads to hopelessness and helplessness and leading to mental health disorders. So you got to intervene at the initial state when you're feeling irritated, when you're feeling resented, when you feel fearful and stressful. That when you intervene before it gets to an actually anxiety. Social anxiety is the commonest. 13% of US population suffers from one type of social anxiety or another. Whereas general anxiety is only 6, panic disorder, very common, agoraphobia. 66% of patients who have alcohol dependence, retrospectively, if you look around 66% of them meet criteria for panic disorder or social anxiety disorder. This is what I was saying. This is the brain, general idea. And then look at this. Remember, I told you the prefrontal cortex. It is important. The reason is, if you can look at it, this is, I don't know if you can see my cursor. This is the limbic system, one on the left side, which says amygdala, hippocampus, and subgenual prefrontal cortex. This is called limbic system. This is where thalamus and hypothalamus. This is where your mind lives. This is where your emotions live. And then there is, on the left side, there is dorso medial frontal cortex and annulus cingulate gyrus, and then there's ventromedial in the next slide. These are what are called emotional centers of the brain. Amygdala, the one in purple, the smaller one in the purple, is the crybaby of the brain. It looks around in the environment and says, hey, this is not going well. This is not going well. Oh, there's a stress coming. And then this prefrontal cortex quiets it down. Hey, it's all right. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. I looked around. It's fine. It's fine. But the thing is, remember I told you, stress, trauma predisposes you to thinning of this frontal cortex. So when you're predisposed because of the thinning of the frontal cortex, the ability to influence negatively on amygdala goes down, and then you feel more stress, even though the stress level is the same outside. Because of the predisposition, you're feeling more. I guess, a lot of old people may not remember, but I guess I remember, like, this is the Eeyore, it's like, he's always depressed. He's never happy. I mean, he's neither happy nor sad. It's like, he's more often sad. It's got a negative outlook. And this is what is called persistent depression. Now, again, going back to the same thing, I didn't realize that I added another slide. So what are the common disorders? Depression, persistent depression. Persistent depression is this Eeyore. And then minor depression, postpartum depression. I mean, this is surprising to many people. I think there is postpartum depression in men. 1 in 10 dads suffer from postpartum depression. Yes, women suffer more, but men also do. And then there's a new diagnosis in younger children, DMDD. Again, postpartum depression is like loss of freedom. Have to take care of another child, life, grief over loss of freedom, stress, poor sleep. It's just not women who sleep poorly. Men sleep with them. Fathers and mothers sleep together. And when the mother gets up for a feed, hey, your sleep is going to be disrupted, especially if you have a family history of depression. And plus, you don't have good support system. So, I mean, I don't want you to think, every stressful person is going through depression. It's like, when you're depressed, sad, irritable, and that interferes with your life and your work, then we call it a diagnosis. Before that, we just call it stress. This is the same thing, dysthymia, it's lower grade depression. You're more often upset and unhappy than not. These are the diagnostic criteria. I don't want to go in detail because it's useless. It is better to talk about, what is actually, in terms of, let's say, I would explain to you like this. Let's say you feel stressed and you feel exhausted. You feel tired. You cannot think right. You feel you have memory problems. And you feel like, I need to do something. I need to pick myself up. and this is affecting your life. You're becoming more aggressive, more possessive. It's time to think there's something going on. Actually get help. Now, you can do many things on your own. As I mentioned, this is just stigma I was talking about. You know, as I mentioned, it's time is coming up. So I'm going to, I mean, men do express their emotions, but they express very differently. They said, I wanted to punch something. This is how you're showing aggression, your possessiveness. Or they say, I felt it. I was kicked in the gut. And then they say talking won't help. So men talk very differently than women. Expressing feelings is a big, awful thing. So as I said, diet and exercise matters a lot. If you take up exercise, it will, remember I told you there are two hormones which have gone up, cortisol and adrenaline. You can decrease them by just exercising. Diet and exercise, good. Conversation with your spouse, with your friends, and sleeping on time, because it changes circadian rhythm. It has direct connection with your mind. And social supports, family supports are extremely important. Now, there are people anecdotally who have gone into depression, like, when somebody's father died and they were feeling very depressed, they actually told their friends, hey, I want to meet with you as a group every week. And they did that for 5-6 months till their depression resolved. That's what I'm talking about by friend support. Religious, spiritual support. You got to be attached somewhere meaningfully, not going to the masjid every Friday. People who go to masjid 5 times a day tend to have better relationship and better support compared to not. Remember, you got to bring it down. There's something called sympathetic tone and parasympathetic tone. Remember, I told you autonomic nervous system. This is the yin and the yang. You can bring down your sympathetic tone by cardio exercise. Your heart rate goes up, your breathing goes up, like brisk walking, jogging. Now, there's another thing called parasympathetic tone, which you can increase and decrease the sympathetic tone. That is by meditation. In Muslims, my grandfather used to do muraqaba. He used to sit quietly and just think. My grandmother used to say, hey, don't disturb. For 1 hour, he's going to sit there and think. Now I understand it is nothing but meditation. That actually decreases sympathetic tone. So if you feel your stress, please get a physical. The irony is that only 60% of males get physical as opposed to females. And the physician, half of the men are not asked about their mental health. And even when they pick up mental health issues, they pick up like major depression, they pick up only 85% of the time. And how many times they treat it? Only 50% of the time. And how many people actually remain in treatment? Only 20%. There's an 80% dropout rate amongst men when it comes to mental health issues. Simple blood work will work. Men hate therapy because they don't want to go for therapy. It's like they don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole because it's considered you're expressing emotions. And they've been told expressing emotions is not masculine. So men tend to do, instead of expressive therapy, tend to do more with direct therapy, like counseling. There is actually a slide about counseling, and I think here it is, short-term counseling versus long-term counseling. Men tend to do better with counseling. Counseling is directive, like cognitive behavior therapy. You're given exercises, you're given the reason, you're given the rational reason, what's happening, and then you're going to give an exercise. You do express, but only 10% of the time. 90% of the time, you're actually doing something. Men tend to like that. There's another therapy called dialectical behavior therapy. That's another whole concept. Then acceptance and commitment therapy. This tends to work better for men compared to women. Medications. Hey, I'm a shrink. I'm a psychiatrist, so I do prescribe medications. Men tend to accept medication more often than women, even though they are treated less. Out of the treated people, men don't want to go for therapy. They would rather take a medication. It's almost like 70% of the time, if they're given the choice, they'll say, I'll take medications compared to. And then, there are lots of medications for all the common medication which is used now is SSRIs. I'm sure you have heard about Prozac, Zoloft. These are the common medications that are used both for depression and anxiety. Medications work like 70% of the time. So this slide is both for men accepting medication and also working, but there's still 30% they don't work. So you have to go back and you have to be tried on another medication. It's extremely important to understand this concept that, oh, they take one medication, it's not working. Oh, I told you it's not going to work. And yes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the first medication is going to work only 70% of the time. Then you have to try something more. And once the medication works, if you have mild depression, therapy alone is fine. Or, sometimes medications alone are fine. But when you have a moderate depression where, it is interfering with your life moderately and it is affecting your job and relationship, you do need medications as a first choice. Therapy works, combination works better. Severe depression, medications are absolutely important because it kind of drives you towards hopelessness, helplessness, psychosis, that is hearing voices, hearing things and seeing things and thinking people are out to get you. At that time, you do need medications or hospitalization. Similarly with anxiety disorders, if it interferes with life, you got to be taking medications. Mild, again, therapy alone will work. But if it's moderate to severe, you do need medications. Now, the thing is, the newer medications that I mentioned to you, SSRIs, like Prozac, Zoloft, Paxil, Luvox, they have side effects. So you need to discuss about that with your physician or psychiatrist. Just because you're going through mental health issues, you don't have to come to a psychiatrist. You can go to a therapist, counselor, or your own primary care physician. But it gets severe, then if it's not getting better, then you're referred to a psychiatrist. Unfortunately, psychiatrists have like 2-3 months waiting list. And some psychiatrists don't even take insurance. Unfortunately, I'm one of them. So I apologize in advance. Now, this is me in the picture when I was a little younger. I do have a private practice, but it's very pricey. So I don't advertise because majority of the people will not afford it. But I do run a free mental health clinic at ISB, Islamic Society of Baltimore. I've even given a number there and a website you can go and contact and get treatment for free. In my private practice, initial evaluation is $450 to $600, as opposed to you'll get the same kind of care at ISB free clinic, the same thing you get for free. Unfortunately, we take only people who are indigent, recent immigrants, and who don't have insurance. But from case to case, we do consider, hey, let me do an eval, and then we'll refer you out somewhere. So please make use of that free clinic. It's not free, that means substandard. It is the same standard because I'm the same person doing it. And I always keep that in mind, that Allah is looking at me and watching over me, and I can't make mistakes. So I don't have double standards. So thank you very much. You've been very patient. Unfortunately, I left only 4 minutes for question and answers. That is not good. Maybe we'll extend it. I don't know. It's with the moderator, Mr. Wakhas. So back to you, Mr. Wakhas. I mean, do we have any questions that people have asked, or no? Because I think my time is up, right? 6 to 7.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, Dr. Saab.
But tell me, let me know if my time is not up. I can talk another 1 hour.
Yes.
Out of nothing, out of thin air, I have the ability to talk for 1 hour on no topic. So
okay. So I got a message that we are allowed to extend if anybody has any questions. And I have already gave the option to all the participants. They can unmute themselves and then go, they can ask a question. But I think let's go one by one. If they can raise up the hand, and then we can, allow them to ask the question one by one. So anybody has any question, please raise your hand or just, unmute so that we know that you are having a question. Okay, I think Brother Azim, you can go ahead.
Dr. Sahab, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam. How are you, brother
Jazakal,
Azim?
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Raqs. Jazakallah for giving us this informative session. I'm hoping
You're
this
welcome.
session is getting recording. I wanted to have a copy of this session so that I missed earlier part of the session and I wanted to look at more things into some more details and then call you back.
Oh, sure. It is being recorded, as I know, because it's showing that it's being recorded. Brother Wakhas can tell you
Yes.
how to
So, Brother
get it.
Azim, yes, it is being recorded, and we will hopefully have it available on our YouTube page, so you can later watch it whenever you need to. And then,
Jazakallah khair.
and if anybody else has any question they are not comfortable asking, then they can type in, and I can ask Dr. Sab in that regard.
You can type in anonymously,
Yes.
about picking up dangerous habits. Yeah, the thing is, if you feel that you need to pick up dangerous habits, somebody got to take notice. As I said, there is a study in which people have committed suicide retrospectively. When we looked at them, 36% of them took up dangerous sports like bungee jumping. Just looking at it, I feel like, oh my God, he's going to die. But that's what they're practicing. Or skydiving, diving from airplanes from 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet. I mean, you've always been a risk taker. That's a very different issue. But if you suddenly start taking risk, then there's something going on. On the other hand, as I mentioned to you earlier, when you're not feeling the adrenaline and you feel so depressed that you've gone past the stress level and you're actually depressed and you don't feel excited, you want to feel excited and you take up these dangerous sports. Not necessarily, bungee jumping, suddenly people say, let me go on roller coasters. Like 4 or 5 years ago, my wife and I were in the line to ride a roller coaster, and I looked around and told my wife, can you look around? You and I are the only person of our age in this line. Everybody else is teenagers. So, if you suddenly take up roller coaster riding just to feel the exhilaration, you're taking care of the stress. Or any other dangerous sports, suddenly you pick up football, tackle sports. It's important to understand, especially for people who are looking out for their significant others, brothers and fathers. It's like, hey, what's going on? You've taken up this dangerous sport. The person himself may not know. There's another question. So if a person has those dangerous habits since teenage time, that doesn't necessarily mean, let me see, worrisome. No. I'm talking about sudden onset of these. So, remember in one of the slides, I said, there's people who are risk takers and who don't typically risk takers tend to get anxious or depressed. So if you're doing it from teenage years or early adulthood years and you're used to it, that's not worrisome. But, ask yourself a question. Why am I doing this? Do I enjoy this? Or I'm getting something out of this? Or all of a sudden I feel the need to kick myself into higher gear and want to feel the adrenaline. Of course, there's some adrenaline junkies, they do more dangerous things to feel. I'm telling you, I am extremely anxious, but I still do it. I took up these sports when I came to this country. I don't know how to swim. But I still go on boating with my son to catch fish. I know if I capsize, they're more likely I'm going to die. Then I went white water rafting. I knew that was a horrible thing, but I still went because I just wanted to feel the adrenaline and also be with my kids. I mean, I've done so many things that I've never done in my life. But does that mean I'm depressed? No. I'm not saying that. It depends on the person. You should ask the person what is going on. Or if you're doing such things, what is it that you're looking for? Are you stressed? And this is your way of expressing stress. That's acceptable too. So I just want you to know, we've been to Ocean City and I did, what is it called? That water scooter or what does water ski or something? I did that too. I knew that if that capsizes, what's that? Jet ski. And, the first time I did it, I was sitting behind my daughter and I was telling her, don't go beyond 40, don't go beyond 40. She was saying, either you drive or I'm going to drive. And then, I actually did it on my own, and it's like, it's crazy. You're wearing a vest, but what are the chances? But I do it anyway. So, that is risk-taking personality. In spite of having anxiety, in spite of having setbacks, there is a personality, the people with those kind of personality and temperament who want to try, take risks. These are the people who don't tend to get depressed or anxious or stressed for that matter. I don't know. I want to ask a question. There are about 17 people here. How many people were surprised by increased suicide attempts in Muslims? I was surprised. I haven't done that study in a long time. And I was really surprised when I saw those numbers. It's like, oh my God, I thought that Islam particularly, and religion in general, is a protective factor, because that's what we used to learn when I was in medical school umpteen years ago, because that was, in anxiety, depression, that was a protective factor. But now in 2022, it is not a protective factor. It's actually a predisposition. Of course, a good number of Muslims are also immigrants. Suicide attempts, suicidal thinking, hopelessness is much more common in immigrants compared to the native population. The number of suicides are much higher in immigrants compared to the native population, because immigrants, not everybody immigrates. You immigrates, you got to have some temperament in you to get out of your comfort zone and come to a total different place. So they do have this risk-taking behavior, but when they come to the new country, adjustment is a big issue. That is one of the biggest driving force for increased rates of depression, anxiety, stress, and ultimately suicides. So here, religion is actually not protecting you. Now, there is no delineation between practicing Muslims and non-practicing Muslims. So, maybe practicing Muslims are less likely to commit suicide, but non-practicing Muslims, believe me, the one you come to a country, a non-Muslim country, the one thing you lose is your language. The second thing you lose is culture, and religion is the first thing to leave your brain. So there, as opposed to what people think that Muslims are more religious than Christians, we are just as unreligious as Christians. According to data from UK, only 4% of people, just 4% of people actually pray once a day. In Jummah, you would think everybody prays Jummah. Only less than 10% of people pray Jummah. So Muslims are not very practicing. The reason we see fuller mosques is just so many of them, and there are less number of mosques. That's the only reason. We Muslims think, oh my God, look at that. Religion is rising fast. Yes, it is spreading fast, but you're losing faster than you are increasing. Is that we are increasing in numbers because of immigration, higher fertility rate. That is the reason we're increasing in numbers. Practicing wise, we are just as bad as Christians or Jewish folks. Note of caution, maybe I'm puncturing your bubble or your comfort level, but hey, wake up and smell the roses. Here, smell the sunshine. You got to look and smell both together. I'm deliberately using an inappropriate proposition. Don't be under the slumber that, practicing Muslims are protected. No guarantee. Got to take care of yourself and get to know more about yourself than you have tried to. Looks like there are no more questions. I sincerely thank everybody who attended. You could have chosen not to attend because I'm not anybody. People don't know me in Laurel that much as they know me in Baltimore area. So I really sincerely thank you that you took the chance on me to come and listen to me. Thank you very much. May Allah protect you guys and protect your children from harm. Wa sallallahu ta'ala khair khalqi sayyidina Muhammad. Brother Waqas, you have the last words.
Jazakallah khair. I hope everybody is being benefited from the information that you shared with us. And inshallah, if anybody has missed it out anything, it is recorded and it will be shared among our YouTube channel page. So if anybody has any question, please reach out to us. And even if you have a question for Dr. Sir, we will try to reach out and try to get you the answer if anybody is looking and they are not able to share their questions over here. So Jazakallah khair, Dr. Sir.
You're welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Walaikum assalam.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.